Hello and welcome to this Super Bowl edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of purplePTSD.com. Unfortunately, at this point, here with Mr. Joe Oberly, who also writes for, or I guess used to, since we can't figure out how to log him into the site, used to write for purplePTSD.com. And also
so that's where we're at?
Yep. In case any of you that stopped looking at our website about 4 days ago, we are live.
You realize it, Joe. If the Vikings are now, I don't give a crap. So I haven't been paying attention all week.
Yeah.
Can't get in the site. What the heck?
That's also kind of the best advertisement for the podcast ever. He also
I just got this image of you like throwing your laptop away and then just like fleeing to like Miami, kicking back with a Mai Tai and just being like, see you guys in October.
Right.
Starting like a shuffleboard PTSD website.
I am out of here.
Joe writes for the Sports Post too when he's when the mood strikes him. And also on the show is Luke Braun, who is logged in, I think, to purplePTSD.com, but he's one of the...
God, I hope so.
We'll see.
Unfair.
That's just my way of saying to anyone that's listening that the site will be fixed at some point. It's close. It's just, one thing breaks, another thing breaks.
It's up there, though. You can go look at it and read stuff that we got up there. So
yeah, we have
I love the way it looks. It looks very nice. Get in.
I think Joe's trying to send me a signal.
I'm a passive-aggressive sort of leader, so...
I mean, you're a Minnesotan.
Yeah, it's Minnesota nice. But
Minnesota nice is Minnesota you don't realize we're being mean.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. But yeah, how are you guys doing? It's Super Bowl week. That's exciting. We were off last week, so I'm going to blame that on our horribly awkward intro, but...
I had all these awesome Pro Bowl takes. Damn.
That skills competition was so fun.
I didn't even see it.
Oh my God, it was cool.
Go ahead, Luke.
It was so silly and fun.
Like they used to be.
Yeah, you could, it definitely just stopped taking itself seriously, which I think was the best thing. Screw the game. I just want that every year.
Did they do, long... I know I saw something about, the kickoff between field goal kickers, but when I was younger, I used to play Sega Genesis with one of my buddies, and our favorite game was called 1994 NFL Quarterback Club, and it was just the skills competition from the Pro Bowl in a video game, and you had to do target practice with moving targets and who could throw the ball
that was
the
in
farthest.
There, and it was great, and Phillip Rivers crushed it, and everyone else was bad. Drew Brees was horrible.
Really?
Yeah, and so was Dak and Dalton. Rivers crushed everyone. They dropped footballs from drones for the punt return people to catch. For Patrick Peterson and Odell and a couple other guys, and they had to catch it from a drone 100 feet above them.
Wow.
And they had another catching competition, and then they had dodgeball. They had a legit dodgeball game, and T.Y. Hilton almost made a heroic comeback before he got drilled by an absolute laser from Ezekiel Elliott.
What?
And there's a hilarious gif of Alex Smith one-hopping one of these balls in a dodgeball game.
Ah, man.
It was so good.
Yeah, I stopped watching the Pro Bowl when they got rid of that kind of stuff. It was just I used to love watching Favre go up against Vinny Testaverde and try to throw it 75 yards. Anyone?
Yeah, I was in Miami. Sorry.
Speaking of which, they moved it to... Are they not doing it in Hawaii anymore? Isn't that...
This is Orlando.
Part of the reason why people wanted to go in the first place?
I'm not sure what the deal with the location change was.
I think the people that have been there for a while, the novelty of Hawaii wore off, and the people that hadn't gone there, they wanted to go to Hawaii, and I don't know. It's probably logistics. They're I don't know. They're just trying so many different things just to make it work and make people tune in because the NFL's bumming. Here's 1 week out of the year that they don't rule the world, so maybe
and it's the week before their biggest week, and it's like you could have so much hype. It feels like such a missed opportunity if it sucks. Well, but it doesn't suck. It was awesome.
That's I mean, to me, that was the biggest blunder they made, was getting rid of the skills competition, just because it seems like guys try a little bit harder in that than they do in the actual game, just because it's, bragging rights and everything. But
other than baseball, they're all just kind of silly. Unless the skills competition's better, absolutely, in all of them. I mean, the NBA,
hockey's really cool too.
MLB made a great decision by putting stakes on the All-Star game. Because isn't there like home field writing on that for the World Series, the winning conference?
They got rid of it just now, though, I thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just heard that they announced that wasn't going to dictate home field anymore, and a lot of like baseball Reddit purists were like super happy about it. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want it to be completely meaningless, you have to attach some meaning to it. But I guess which is
or it could just be meaningless and fun, like the skills competition was.
Yeah, I mean, football's different because you can blow your knee out. I mean, you can do it in any sport, but people aren't going to go out there and completely, like, especially on defense, just light people up. It's more of a flag football game than anything.
Yeah, how did Everson Griffin get a bunch of sacks? I thought they kind of outlawed sacks in the Pro Bowl.
It was like the lowest scoring Pro Bowl in a while, wasn't it?
I don't know, but I know in years past you weren't supposed to hit the quarterbacks. I didn't watch it, but I read that the next day, and I was like, what the heck? He was sacking people. Like, they need to put a rope around him.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it either.
He was lobbying for the MVP is all I took from it.
Yeah, it helps if your team wins.
Yeah, the AFC won, so I don't think any NFC players could be. But Anthony Barr had a good game too, and people are going to use it for takes now, which I find hilarious.
Yeah. Like that resurrects the year.
Yeah, totally.
Like
he did have a cast on for the whole game, which is interesting.
Where? On what?
On his wrist.
Really?
Which is where all of the tinfoil hat people said he had an injury all year that he was listed for early in the year, and it just kept bothering him, but he wasn't like, he was full practice and everything, so they didn't put him on the injury report. That's the tinfoil theory of why he was bad. And if you look at, like, I think I've talked about this before, if you look at, like, the things he did poorly that he didn't used to do like, he was always man coverage, but he was really good at getting off blocks except for until this year, and that's a hands thing. That's a hands aggressiveness thing, and if your hand is hurt, you can't be as aggressive with it, so that then you get worse at that.
Do they have to report off-season surgery, like, when it happens?
I have no idea.
Because I was just wondering if a cast implies that maybe he got some arthroscopic surgery or something, but then he probably wouldn't be running around at the Pro Bowl either.
That's a good question. I don't know if they have to, but they do, because there's, Mike Zimmer doesn't have any games imminent, so he's, the competitive balance isn't out of whack, so I'm sure he allows that information out, but I don't know if they have to. That's a good question.
Or you could end up like the Seahawks and losing draft picks over the Richard Sherman thing, which is kind of the other end of the spectrum, but I always find that kind of stuff interesting.
Kind of crazy, because didn't the Vikings get fined for doing something like that, like, not too long ago, and now people are losing draft picks? Like, I feel like we kind of lucked out.
I don't know.
This is
it's off season. I'm in Miami drinking.
I was just going to say, these are... My psyche has been dominated by looking at the homepage of our new website for 12 hours a day, so I am going to have even less takes than I typically do, which is saying something.
So you're sick of you've seen it so much, you're sick of the website, and you want to redesign it again already.
That's always what happens. By the time it's ready, I hate it. It's too much, man. I wasn't built for IT work. Too angry. Which is why I watch football. Is that a good segue?
We do have the Super Bowl.
I know, man.
That's fun.
Kind of exciting. Even though it's been arguably one of the worst playoff runs, I guess, people are saying, ever. Just because the games haven't been very competitive. And
there's one really good game, though.
The Dallas-Green Bay game?
Oh, no.
That was a great one.
No. Falcons.
Oh, the Green Bay Falcons game. That was also phenomenal.
That was the greatest.
Yeah.
There's some
Jeremy
real good
play.
gifs that came out of that, of Aaron Rodgers just getting absolutely drilled after he was unfathomably smug all week, making jokes about crowd noise and pumping in noise and stuff, and the Falcons just drilled him on multiple occasions. Felt so good.
It was, it's interesting. I probably, karma-wise, I probably enjoyed it too much because now, ever since that game, my greatest fear is now they're going to be all hepped up for next year and to try to win the damn Super Bowl on the Vikings field. Oh my God, that would be worse than Favre going from Green Bay to Minnesota. If they did that, I think I might just move to Miami permanently and give up football.
That thought hadn't
That would
even
hurt.
occurred to me that might happen. But the way it's amazing how the narrative changes so quickly. Like, going into the game, obviously, then when the Packers lose, it's everything I saw was, Rodgers can't do it by himself, and Green Bay needs to get help from Rodgers, and the Aaron Rodgers' window
That's
of
true,
opportunity
though.
is closing. It is true, but it's just funny how that doesn't really
Like,
come
what
up
more
that
can
way.
a quarterback do than what Aaron Rodgers did? And if that can't get you there, you can no longer rely on only having a quarterback. You have to do something.
Yeah.
Do you think
Your defense
You're just not going to get a quarterback performance like that again. That is just not repeatable.
Well, I was thinking, I guess my question was the outcome of that game mainly because Atlanta is just that good, or is Green Bay kind of flawed?
Atlanta's defense surprised me a little bit. They weren't that good all season, but they played well in that game. And
They did.
that gives me a little bit of hope going into this weekend that they could make a game out of this thing because New England's got a better defense than the Falcons do on paper, and they both got good quarterbacks, good offenses. So you figure the team with the lesser defense is going to get beat. But after seeing how they really took care of the Packers, I don't know. I've got hope that we'll see a good game on Sunday.
That'd be great. I think it was like the Falcons are definitely a good team, and coming into the playoffs, they were the team I had winning the NFC.
Really?
I think, but I do think a lot of the Packers chickens kind of came home to roost in that game.
I mean,
you just saw that reasonable cornerback play can shut down their wide receivers, even when you have Aaron Rodgers, and the problems in their secondary were just exposed by Julio Jones, and no matter what they did to try and cover him, and even though I do think that they had a significant game plan issue trying to cover him, and the fact that they kept Dom Capers is hilarious. But they just got predictably gashed by better players.
To be honest, to be fair, a little bit, I agree with you, Luke. But they were so deep into their cornerbacks. I mean, they were like,
God, yeah.
If we were playing Sherrells at cornerback a few years back, it was so
even worse.
Yeah, it was so bad that how much cushion they were giving Julio Jones was hilarious. It's like, we're gonna spot him. He can have these 15 yards just so he doesn't score.
Yeah, it was amazing. Although I do want to call back to something I said on the last podcast, which was if you have a heartbreaking NFC Championship loss and then 2 years later get blown out, just saying, that's exactly 98 to 2000 for us. Perhaps the curse has moved on to another NFC North team.
Yeah.
Especially one with an unsustainable model and a bunch of players that may be getting old and leaving, like Julius Peppers and Clay Matthews.
Yeah, I guess my next question is, do you think that their window is... It just seems like they have a lot of pieces to replace.
Because they let them all go.
Yeah. Yeah, who did they let go from
that
their
tackle?
Their secondary, too.
Oh.
Casey Hayward,
Yeah.
who maybe led the league in interceptions? Or was close? I know he was at some point. Casey Hayward.
I know at the time people were ripping when they got rid of the tackle that ended up in Chicago, but I guess he was kind of eating himself out of the league anyway. So.
Exactly. And their
that was a good
offensive line did fine without him. I don't think that was as big as a loss as losing Hayward in the secondary because they had problems. And then Sam Shield goes out with a concussion, is gone for most of the year, and so they were hurting for certain back there.
But it does show you that if you do have, and this is kind of, as I'm saying it, kind of stupid, but when you have a quarterback that is that good, you're going to be a contender pretty much every single year.
Yep.
He did lead the league in interceptions, by the way, with 7. Casey Hayward. So,
For who, Luke?
San Diego.
San Diego. Wow. Yeah, that's it. You gotta sign those guys. I guess I'm heartened by the fact that I haven't seen McCarthy, Thompson, or Capers gone this year yet. And they haven't.
I know.
Yet, so
I was really worried they were going to get like Josh McDaniels.
That'd have been
and have him be like really good on his set, like have him Pete Carroll and be really good on his second go, and then be good for them for like 30 years and be their Belichick. I was really worried about that.
Is McDaniels made a decision? I'm still operating.
He's staying.
Is he?
Yep. The only job he could have taken was the 49ers job, and he noped out of it, and he decided to continue being the best offensive coordinator in the league now that Shanahan is.
The 49ers hire what's-his-face? The safety?
They hired John Lynch as a GM.
Yeah.
The dude has never been a GM or even close to a front office in his life.
I don't think the 49ers can hire. I think they're like the T-Wolves were a couple years ago. Like, nobody that has any experience wants anything to do with them.
Yeah, it's interesting with a franchise that's as storied as that one that they can't attract.
It's the same ownership, right, Joe? As back
I believe
in the
so.
day?
Well, it's not DiBartolo anymore, is it? I don't think.
I thought he got in trouble for some back end dealings or real estate stuff, and went to prison.
He's since passed away too, but I don't know who the ownership is now, but whoever it is making decisions like the guy out in Cleveland. I don't know. But it sounds like Kyle Shanahan's supposed to go there, right, after the season's over.
Yep, Shanahan's going to be the coach and do a lot of the GM decisions. And Lynch actually got in, I forget his name, but he got in some very well-respected personnel guy to kind of be, like, not a Brzezinski figure, but like kind of what Rick Spielman was before he was GM.
They're going to have a triangle of authority?
Not a triangle of authority, but it's going to be John Lynch kind of being the football czar, if you will, and delegating all the actual football decisions to somebody who knows about it.
A rhombus of authority?
That was funny.
It's not about the geometry.
Trapezoid. Parallelogram.
That's not...
The isosceles triangle.
Isosceles is a word I have not heard in a long time.
John Lynch squared plus Josh McDaniel squared equals... All right, so...
I thought it was interesting, or it was funny when Matt Millen saying, he's got a lot of work to do. How do you know, Matt?
Because he was one of the other, like, really good players and broadcasters to then become a GM, and then he destroyed the Lions. But there are two other former player GMs that are doing very well in Ozzie Newsome and John Elway.
That is true.
Poor man.
I mean, they both had...
But they weren't broadcasters, though.
Well, that's what ruins you, I guess.
Yeah.
If we're going to go back to that.
I always refer to myself as the Matt Millen of Purple PTSD just because every move I want to make is for a wide receiver, and pretty much every article I write is about a wide receiver, so why not?
Matt Millen would have definitely overdrafted Moritz Boringer. Like in the third round, some crap.
Hey, but he had enough practice till he finally... Didn't he draft, what's-his-face?
Like a no-brainer of Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, he finally got one right.
Census best player the Raiders should have taken instead of Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, he took Charles Rogers, who started out good, and then his collarbone exploded 5 times, and he got addicted to pills, and then... What was that
One
guy's
of the
name?
Mike Williams?
Yeah, Williams.
One of the, 7 bad Mike Williams?
Yep, the USC one, and then he took Roy something.
Roy Williams.
Roy Williams. Yeah, that was supposed to be like the Megatron before Megatron came, but he just didn't really pan out that way. But before
he just locked in Megatron so they could waste his career.
Yeah, he also drafted Stafford. Wasn't he in the same draft? No, that was the next year. Sorry.
That was 2 years after. Because Calvin Johnson was in the same draft as Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
What a draft that was. And then Stafford was 2 years later because it was after their 0-16 year, which was 08.
Wow. Stafford was, he was the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
I can't give you any credit for drafting Matt Stafford. That's like drafting Andrew Luck. Like, duh. You just went 0-16 and you took the best quarterback, the only quarterback in the class. Like, congrats.
Well, that's the Vikings, man. When we need them to tank, they never really tank.
No, but they're one of the top 5 or 6 winningest franchises in history, percentage-wise. So I'll take that for what
you would know why they don't tank if you listened to the Infinite Monkeys podcast. Boom plug.
Oh
Nice.
my!
Speaking of plugs, I should probably plug our sponsor, who I should also probably get in touch with. SkullYourHome.com, as always, is our sponsor. If you're looking to buy or sell a house in the metro area and you want to work with a Vikings fan, go to SkullYourHome.com. Also, we'll kind of talk about this in a little bit, but we are working a lot with VikingsTerritory.com too, and that kind of plays into something we're going to talk about. But I wanted to bring that up before, I guess, even though this kind of seems like something we would do at the end of the show, what your guys' thoughts were on the Super Bowl. Like, what team?
Wait,
it
real
sounds
fast.
It sounds like
Something about Vikings territory real fast. Adam Patrick is doing a raffle. And if you go to the Purple PTSD Twitter, we've retweeted it. Or if you go to Adam Patrick's Twitter, he's doing a raffle that's got some pretty cool swag in it. I wanted to plug that.
Luke, when was your second? Was this your second Infinite Monkeys? I didn't see a link.
I've had 3.
Oh! I must not be on your email chain. Something. Just kidding.
It should, if you, I don't know if you've subscribed to this podcast, but if you're subscribed to this podcast in the podcast app, like in the app specifically,
on your phone,
it'll show up on your phone because it's through the same Spreaker account.
Oh, yeah. I do so little through my phone that way. I'm not a digital native, so I'm sorry, but you have to mail me a VHS copy of your.
I'll burn it to a CDR.
Perfect.
And send it to you via USPS. No, I did one about why teams don't tank.
Yep.
And I did one about why the salary cap keeps going up, and now I'm going to do one about the Getty A problem, which will become a little bit more relevant, I think, in a later talking point we're going to have. But it's basically about it's a philosophy one. It's about epistemology, and it's very ethereal.
Excellent. Well, I got to hear him.
Yeah, I should have plugged that earlier in the show too. I'm like 0 for 6 on plugs, but like Luke said, if you follow us pretty much anywhere, excluding Joe's stock ticker methods, you'll come across the Infinite Monkeys podcast too. But yeah, it sounds like you guys are kind of, at least Joe was implying that he was leaning towards the Patriots this Sunday, but
I think so. Yep. I think ultimately their defense is going to do one more stop than the Falcons might, and that might be enough. I'm hoping for a really close game.
I don't think the Patriots defense can completely shut down the Falcons, but I do think they can limit the Falcons, and I worry about the Falcons defense being able to limit Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's just getting obscene, really. Like, every other year, they're basically, since I was a freshman in college, they've been in the Super Bowl, so how can you really game plan against all that experience?
I remember back in 2001 when they won their first Super Bowl. I was a wee 9-year-old boy.
Wow.
And my dad was so cocky about the Rams that year, winning the Super Bowl. He was like, no, there's no way that they'll win. Because they were huge underdogs back then, because nobody really knew about Tom Brady, and nobody really thought Tom Brady was like Tom Brady, They thought he was like a fluke because he was a second-year dude.
Yeah.
And I bet him $1, which was $1 bajillion when you're 9 years old, that the Patriots would win because he was being so cocky and it was bugging me. And then they did win, and that was like maybe the highlight of the 9th year of my life.
Yeah, but I saw on someone today on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, from that Rams team was whining about the fact that he claims that the Patriots taped their practice right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. They probably did. That was their practice back then.
Did you hear about Kyle Shanahan's backpack? They cheated again.
Mm-mm.
They didn't at all. This is a hilarious thing. Some reporter got his backpack mixed up with Kyle Shanahan's at a press conference. Like it was Kyle Shanahan's press conference, or it was at a press conference with like a podium or something, and the backpack was like leaning up against the side of it. And some random reporter from like who knows where, I think actually, it was a 49ers guy asking him questions about being the 49ers coach, thinking it was his backpack, accidentally picked up the wrong one, and it was Shanahan's. And Shanahan started panicking because his game plan was in there.
Oh my.
And for a hot minute, everyone was talking about, oh, the Patriots cheated again, and now they're stealing game plans, and blah, blah, blah. And it's really like some old reporter like getting mixed up about the dude's like 75 or something, like getting mixed up about his backpack.
That's the plot to Fantastic Beasts. Okay, so we're gonna...
What?
Fantastic
I'm going to
Beasts.
take your word for that one, Joe.
The new Harry Potter movie. That's the plot of the...
I have not seen that movie, so that one just fell on real deaf ears.
Dude, all I've done in the last 2 weeks is work on the website and watch Harry Potter movies. So, I thought we could have a section about who is the best Quidditch board. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and there it was. That section is over. Brought to you by Joe.
Brought to you by StoreYourHome.com.
By our future host, to be determined.
J.K. Rowling. Well,
so, speaking
next issue.
we there's some coaching changes out there people were hyped up about, I've heard. George Stewart is gone. People seem to... I don't know, Luke, you can explain this better because I was getting this secondhand through you, but it seemed like people kind of weren't happy with that move, or I don't know.
It's weird. There's kind of two sides. I mean, George Stewart's been a little bit of a hotly debated person for the last few years just because the wide receivers have been so bad. But, like, he was our wide receivers coach for, like, 10 years. And he's been a wide receivers coach for forever, and he's worked with guys like Jerry Rice and all these all-time greats. So he has this, kind of Norv Turner-ish reputation where he's been in the business for forever. So, like, good for the Chargers. I don't know if he's ever been a special teams coach, and if he has, it was more than a decade ago. So that's a kind of a weird move. And also, we've had all kinds of, like, young players failing, like Cordero Patterson taking 4 years to become a 400-yard receiver, Laquan Treadwell, Sidney Rice, having 1 year, and really that was just because of Favre.
Yeah.
You can give him credit for Diggs being so technically sound and Thielen's development into a technically amazing receiver, but I don't know if that overcomes 10 years of futility.
Yeah, but what about, is it more of Patterson's stuff on him? I mean, when he finally...
that's really where the debate is.
Yeah. But, to take the other side at George Stewart, I mean, prince of a guy. I mean, if you're... And I spend time at camp and around Winter Park, and this guy is one of the, best dudes you're ever going to run into at a football practice. A lot of people, coaches and what have you, are very serious and angry and strident and concerned and forced, what have you. But George is he's just a great guy. He'll come up and talk to you and act like he's known you all his life. He's really that kind of a nice guy. I mean, you also got to go back. I mean, you got, what's his name? Percy Harvin did pretty good when he was here. I mean, maybe you mentioned, but I don't know if you can go play by a player. I'm surprised by all of a sudden you coach, receivers all this time, and all of a sudden you're a special teams coordinator. I guess I don't understand. I guess guys know the whole game. I don't know. I don't understand how they can jump around like that if they're not more specialized. But there it is. But I think it's a loss to a certain degree, and depending on if they get somebody better, maybe it's time for some new blood. I can agree with that. But as far as on a personal level, wonderful guy.
Maybe it's because all the receivers we've drafted only make an impact on special teams. That's where he's getting his experience. I don't know. I would blame whoever. I'm sure
he's the best at coaching gunners. First round punt gunners.
Now that's a specialty.
I don't know. I haven't been a fan of a lot of the receivers we've been taking the past decade. I think the only two that Percy Harvin and Diggs, you could say Thielen, but most of them that have failed are from.
Thielen is an undrafted free agent that is now wildly outperforming his expectations.
Thielen?
Yeah, so I think you can give him credit for Thielen.
You're still butthurt about Thielen for crying out loud, Joe. Come on, get over it, bro.
I'm
Can I give you some names of other wide receivers that George Stewart has coached?
Yes.
Andre Allison.
Nice.
Chandler Williams. Jamar Johnson.
God.
There's Percy. I'm just looking at the draft history of the last decade. Stephen Burton.
Yep. Who was the
Darius
guy?
Wright's out there. There's Greg Childs, although
there
that
he is.
You can't really talk about the coach.
If you're saying he's coached them and they've gone on elsewhere and had great careers, fine, then he's a failure. But if they're out of the league, it's because it's on the player and it's on the person who drafted him. And I'm not sure how much George Stewart had in the draft room as who they're going to take. So
no, we just seem to have this weird bent. By we, I mean Spielman, where he was taking a lot of SEC guys in the second, third round that were from smaller SEC schools, and they all
just a weird trend in the mid-2000s.
Flamed out, like a lot of Gamecocks and Horny Toads.
Just like Southern Eastern Carolina or something.
It's like, what? I always figured we had a scout that was from there that thought he had some sort of inside line on things or something, but the interesting news I thought that came out last week was that we've talked about Patterson maybe getting a contract somewhere else that the Vikings wouldn't be able to match for any number of reasons, but Patterson coming out on the Pioneer Press podcast and saying that he wants to play running back for the Vikings, and I thought that was kind of good news for the Vikings because from what I read, other people's take was that he doesn't really see a chance on the Vikings of kind of cracking the top two on the depth chart. So he was thinking
he just wants Adrian Peterson money, Joe.
So I guess
that quarterback Adrian Peterson money.
I don't know. I thought it was odd that if he's looking for bigger money as a wide receiver, why is he also looking to maybe stick around with the Vikings as a running back? Maybe the market isn't as high. Maybe
I think he knows
telling him that.
If he's a wide receiver 3, like those people don't make a lot of money. But I do think that like there are teams out there that will see him as a guy on the upswing and saying, "Oh, I can expect more production from you than you put out last year," and then that would cause them to pay him more. I don't know if anybody's said like, "Oh, Patterson's just going to go for the money." It's more of I could see a team offering him more than the Vikings do, and I wouldn't blame him at all if he took it. But I think everything we've heard him say has been, "I want to stay with the Vikings. I want to stay with the Vikings. I like the Vikings." It's just like, a lot of players say that, and then the Jaguars offer you $1 gajillion, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go with the $1 gajillion. It's like, no, that's business. No harm.
Here's the other side of that, though. I mean, at least another side of it is from a team, another team's perspective. Are you going to spend big dollars on this dude and have him to come in and have to wait 4 years for him to learn your offense?
Yeah.
That's why maybe he wants to stay with the Vikings because he's finally getting the offense and he knows, he might not get that much more elsewhere, but he's going to be in the meat grinder as far as try to figure things out and what he has to do to be, to learn that offense and excel there. So I don't know. If I was him, I would, try to, leverage my current team as much as I can because he's going to succeed here more, I think, right out of the gate than he is elsewhere. I guess the way I feel, but
I don't know about learning offense. Like the offense is the thing. I think learning how to be a wide receiver period is a thing because he's in his third offense now. I mean, he's been switching playbooks from Musgrave to Turner to Shermer. But I do think you're right that like he technically took a long time to develop. And that does cause worry about, like, if I'm not constantly hounding you on how to run a route and do this with your legs and make sure you sell it with your hips and stuff like that, you're going to, start falling back into bad habits and become bad again. And I don't want to pay a bunch of money because of that risk. That might be me hopefully thinking. I really hope we keep him. I hope he's a Viking. I just feel like the Vikings, knowing who he is and knowing about his learning curve and stuff, will value him lower than other teams who don't know that will.
Yeah, I just can't imagine he's going to be like the prototypical high. What am I trying to say? When teams overspend a guy with potential. I don't think that even he's had 52 catches this year. It's not like he broke any. I mean, he was pretty much. He didn't seem like he was breaking as many tackles or it was as slippery as I think fans expected him to be.
Nice and physical.
Yeah,
but he was like a decent wide receiver. He was a nice contributor.
It wasn't like his rookie season where you were like, wait, just wait. It was more like, okay, this is what he's going to be.
Which goes back to your earlier point, Luke, that he's going to be a third wide receiver. He's not going to get paid that much. He's going to get paid a little more because of his huge value in the return game. But
Yep.
and
that's probably what it is. He's looking to maximize his value and is throwing his hat in the ring with the running back thing. And I personally have probably written about this 4 times, but I don't understand why they haven't used him in that capacity more, especially with the struggles coming out of the running game.
Did you read his Players Tribune article?
No.
This was actually super interesting. So he wrote an article for the Players Tribune, which was awesome, and it was all about kick returns.
Patterson
And he
did?
talked about why, Patterson did, and he talked about why he doesn't return punts, and it's because it's because he doesn't have as much time to set up.
Oh.
And if you don't have enough time to set up and trust yourself to set up for a punt, you definitely don't have enough time to trust yourself to set up for a run.
Yeah, because I saw a quote from the podcast where he kind of let this all out. That was almost the exact opposite of that, where he was saying, people keep telling him that if you're this good at fielding kicks, you should be that good at being a running back, but that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. But he's done well, I mean, at least as a rookie, and everyone goes back to that Rams game in 2014 where he had 100 yards and a touchdown.
yeah, Herschel Walker wanted to be a bobsledder too. So
Yeah, what are you gonna do? I don't know. I'm a fan of Patterson.
I would love to see him stay here, excel. I mean, just build on what he's got going, and good point about another offense. But it's just he has not quite learned how to be a professional. And I think he's starting to get that, and you can tell he's comfortable and happy here, and that's important
his
to him.
Friend on the team.
That's right. So I think he's got the best chance to excel here. So he probably leverages some other team for some money and ultimately stays here. I would have to be convinced about whether I think it's a good idea or not. I mean, if it's successful, fine. Throw him in as a running back, and screw people up, defensive up. But I don't know. I don't think he's not the same kind of guy as Ty Montgomery over in the Packers, and I think that's what he's speaking from. I think
totally different dude.
He's a different kind of player, and his skill set is different. So I don't see it exactly doing great guns, but as a trick play, they throw enough trick plays, and it's worth a try.
Remember before the season when there were all those videos from the Vikings media network of Cordell Patterson and Teddy Bridgewater playing rock paper scissors that was fun and jovial and everything didn't suck yet?
Yep.
Well, that was sad. That was real. That was a memory that was happy before we were no longer allowed to be happy.
Especially with Jason Cole's hard-hitting, deep cover investigation that came out this week about Teddy Bridgewater being out until 2025.
He's going to be dead. He died. He's gone.
Natural causes.
Yeah.
Right. They'll be picking up his option in 2022.
I don't know if this is, and we talked about this off air, if this is just something that happens now with the state of how quote-unquote sports journalism is these days, but there seems to be, like with this or with the so-called mutiny that people had in the Green Bay game, where people pick up on these small things and blow them up into this huge kerfuffle, and then a day later it's basically, oh, well, that was just all for nothing or all for naught.
Yay, Twitter.
Speaking of someone who has had the past several years find stories, find things to write about in the off season, and just several times a week, anything that's said or any little nuance, you just take it and jump on and go with it. And it's I've talked with many beat reporters who just can see how frustrated the Vikings and other teams get with this kind of thing going on. How whenever somebody does this, they have to respond. I mean, when you read the quotes from the Vikings in this situation, you can just see them throwing up their hands and saying, well, we really haven't changed. We don't say anything different than we said when Zimmer spoke about it 2 weeks ago. It's still the same. Nothing's changed. But other tthan somebody decided, oh, I need to fill a spot here on the website, so here we go. It's got to be frustrating for the team, and then the beat writers have to chase it down, and because their editors are saying, you got to go see if this is true. Is this true? It's just true. Write a story about it, and it just has a life of its own. I would to answer your question, Joe. Yeah, it's the nature of sports journalism these days.
Maybe
it's the nature of all journalism. That's like a whole Twitter, all of this like internet journalism and stuff. It's like a whole thing that's happening, not just in sports.
You got fake news. I was gonna say maybe the
Vikings
should hire Sean Spicer or whatever that guy's name is to do their press conferences.
That would work. I think it's important to point out with this Jason Cole story that it was a Bleacher Report video, and it was one of those little 26-second shareable videos. The only thing he actually cites in it is a doctor who talked about it way back when the injury actually happened. Before any rehab had happened, before we knew anything, saying, it's about 19 months of a recovery, and then he did math and counted it all up and said, oh, well, that would take you to the end of the 2017 season. So no new information was imparted. Nothing changed, but people took it as gospel, which is also hilarious because it's Jason Cole, and the guy once reported that the Jaguars were going to move to St. Louis.
Yeah,
Luke, how was it presented? I mean, was it presented not necessarily this is breaking news, but was it presented as, if you had that big enough...
Not even, really.
It seemed to me like he
was like a doctor once said this, and if you do that, he won't make the... It was definitely, like you said, it felt like one of those things where it's the off-season and I need content, so here's a piece based on this quote from, September, and here's a little 20-second thing. Hopefully you guys share it on Facebook.
It was kind of a weird mix to me watching the video of, a national writer actually just glimpsing over at Vikings land for 2 seconds and saying, I'll update people on what's going on with the Vikings because maybe people aren't, up to date on all the Teddy Bridgewater stuff. But the video I watched, it seemed like he was kind of disingenuously implying that he had some sort of inside source because they kept saying, according to Jason Cole's source, it's 19 months. And so
that's everybody who retweeted the thing and who wrote their own articles about that piece. The actual video that Jason Cole did was talking about a doctor source from, crap we already knew way long ago. Okay. And then everybody else said, Jason Cole has a source.
Yeah, and the thing is that doctor never examined Teddy either. It's just like...
No, it was this kind of thing takes about 19 months, I guess. It was it's a very offhanded,
yeah.
This is kind of an average deal with, it's not... When you're an NFL quarterback and you have access to the best rehab and you're grinding it every day because it's your job rather than just, trying to get back to regular... it's a totally different situation, and talking about an average is not really helpful.
Not at all. And that's... The video I watched, too, did say that the average based on the injury, not based on any insider knowledge or anything coming out of the Vikings or Bridgewater specifically. So it was just much to do about nothing, I guess.
I'm just waiting for him to Jason Cole to tweet a story about when Joe's coming back from his foot injury. I mean, there's been all kinds of speculation out there. And
everybody wants to know, and it's back off.
And, as soon as they do, we'll sit here and we'll go to the source.
Well, I've just been looking, I've been Googling, averages, and just kind of going that way. But speaking of my foot, it is not healing correctly, so who knows what's wrong with it.
Oh, good.
19 months is usually the average.
Yeah, that's what I heard, too. Jason Cole texted me. I'm trying to figure out who his source is. I'm kind of pissed off about it, but...
Certainly nobody that examined you.
I just have body image issues. But speaking of which...
It's silly. It's silly. It's the state of the way things are. It's the state of
supply and demand, People, like you said, Joe, people need to put something out there, and that's something people will click on.
But... When I was covering the Vikings for CBSSports.com, I mean, you're looking for this stuff every day. As something comes out so that you can I make a story about that? Can I make a news item about that? If you do your job and then go interview somebody and chase somebody down, fine, and then it's a legitimate story to a degree. But ultimately, I've talked to the PR staff at the Vikings. They're just pulling their hair out because they got to respond to every one that calls them up on these things, and they're totally baseless a lot of times. But so it is.
When you work in a world where you have to provide daily content, and you have to constantly be making things and constantly having ideas, even when your creative brain doesn't have anything or there isn't any topics to worry about, you're right, you would just have to do stuff.
Yep.
And I really don't blame Jason Cole for doing that. I blame everybody else for taking his word as gospel instead of doing like an ounce of research on the dude and understanding that he's just one of those guys that has to come up with daily content. Like, go ahead, Jason Cole, make your paycheck. That's fine. I respect the grind, but we shouldn't take him at his word like he's Adam Schefter talking about an inside source in the Vikings.
I agree with you, Luke. It's more on those people that follow up and do it, but he's got some skin in this game. He's got some culpability here to dredge up something that's this far back and not provide anything new and not provide any closer source, and then just say I have a source, or come on, if his vehicle for throwing it out there is too big and too so many people see it that this is going to happen. So to a certain extent, some of that's on him. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's probably not the best for his reputation. I mean, it's kind of a
he didn't provide
situation.
Balls, but yeah, you're right. I lost a little bit in my estimation of him. I mean, if he's just throwing up stuff that goes in on Monday morning, has his first cup of coffee, and says, "Oh God, I got nothing. Okay, this happened a while ago. Let's just do this." It's kind of lazy.
Big time. Well, with that, we have a couple other things we wanted to touch on too. I know, Luke, you wrote an interesting piece. It was probably one of the first pieces to go up on the new website about the '98 Vikings and kind of a where are they now sort of deal.
Yeah, that was real fun. I decided to bust out my best Google foo and see if I could track down some of the starters from that '98 season. And everybody started talking. I got the idea when everybody was talking about the Falcons and how the last time they were in a Super Bowl was that season. So I started talking about those dirty birds and how they, upset the behemoth Vikings and everything. I started thinking about that team, and I was like, I wonder, like, what, like we see like Moss and Carter in the media and stuff, and we all kind of, we kind of know where Gary Anderson is because he's got a website that's called www.GaryAndersonPerfectSeason.com, which is amazing. But like, what about the offensive linemen? What about like Robert Smith? What's he up to? And it was really fun tracking all these guys down and finding their stuff. Yeah, Todd Stussy has a cool, interesting story. All the way down to like Jimmy Hitchcock, who ended up in a multi-million-dollar mortgage fraud conspiracy and is in prison.
Wow. Is that of his own design?
He was definitely one of the principal people in it. He was not the only person, but he was the one paying off bankers and stuff. It was like he pulled down like $4.5 million before he got caught.
Who?
Now
Jimmy
he's in white collar prison. Jimmy Hitchcock, yeah.
I never had heard that. He was always a big thorn in my side. We'd always go into the prevent, and there'd always be a touchdown against Jimmy Hitchcock at the end of the game back in those days. So it doesn't surprise me that he was not the most responsible person in the world. But
there's a lot of high school coaches, a lot of youth groups, a lot of people became entrepreneurs and started their own businesses or purchased things. A little bit of media. A couple people published a book. Randall Cunningham started a church and is an ordained minister.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Isn't his daughter an athlete of some sort? Cunningham's.
I want to say volleyball. She had like a big volleyball thing in high school, right. But I don't know. That was a few years ago when she was in high school.
Moss's daughter's like a basketball savant too.
Somebody has. Jake Reed has a highly touted high school recruit coming out as a son. He's got a son who's a wide receiver. Who's
Brad Johnson's kid too. I've heard he's in 8th grade and he's getting a bunch of D1 offers.
Jesus Christ.
He was on the '98 team technically. That team was so stacked. Yeah, it was. He got hurt and that's why Cunningham played.
I miss Todd Stussy.
Yeah. We had, on paper, man, I mean, the defense doesn't get a ton of respect from those days, but we had a good defense.
Daniel, John Randall.
Robert Griffith.
My favorite.
Those two wouldn't have, McDaniel and Randall wouldn't have played in the Super Bowl had they gone. They both got injured pretty bad.
Oh, that's right.
They missed, like, the second half for a lot of it, didn't they?
Yeah, so the Vikings would have lost in their Super Bowl. So
Was that
and
the
that would have been
second?
that would have been the most. That would have been the most Super Bowl losses of any team. Wait, no, Denver has 5 now, don't they?
Yeah,
It would have
but
been for a
won.
while until Denver got this. It would have been that for a while until Denver got beat up against Seattle. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would prefer that though,
So
because like at least Denver is like not a completely forgettable team. Like Elway's Broncos were a very memorable team. Like who the hell remembers those Dirty Birds until right now when they're in the spotlight because it's the first time they've been in the Super Bowl since.
God, I hate
It's like nobody's that we lost to.
the Dirty Birds.
Like who even was the quarterback of that team?
The quarterback of the Falcons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what was his name?
It's like hard to remember.
I can see the guy in my
Yeah, tall, blonde hair, kind of Jim Kelly looking. What the heck is his?
I'm looking it up.
Oh God, I know his name. Dang.
Stussy's what's stuck in my head for some reason. Let's see here.
Oh, I got it. You guys want it, or you want
Yeah.
to try to guess? Chris Chandler.
Chris Chandler.
There it is.
Yeah, what a completely just blah team to lose to in that stupid dance. I still know how to do. I used to do the Dirty Bird in high school when I scored in hockey, so twice, and I got a 10-minute penalty the second time I did it for taunting. So, and it
Some
was
real barn burners at wide receiver in Tim Dwight, Jamie German, and Ronnie Harris.
Yeah, man. Dwight was like on
Had
kick
good
returns,
wheels.
so fast. He was like what was that? Chris Walsh, but like a million times faster, just because they were both white and shaved their head. But yeah, Tim Dwight. Wow.
Don't you do that, Joe? You shaved your head and you're.
I did.
Yeah.
And now I'm afraid
Oh my
to like
god.
be seen in public more so.
So I'm on the Wikipedia page for the '98 Falcons right now, and the entry for the NFC Championship game starts like this: as of 2016, this remains the greatest win in Falcons history and one of the most amazing upsets in NFL history. And then it goes on to describe the game. Oh my god!
Of course.
It was an offense that had set the regular season record.
Yeah, it's a curse.
I would argue that this last game was probably a better win for the Falcons, just the franchise, because they just were a juggernaut and they just sliced through the entire NFC relatively unopposed.
Yeah. I bet if they lose, or when they lose, I don't know, it was such a Cinderella thing, the 98 thing, just for everybody. I mean, it was so heartbreaking. I had this algebra trig teacher. I was a freshman in high school, and somebody blamed Gary Anderson for the game the next day, and the guy was like 80 years old, the teacher, not the student, even though there were a few of those floating around. And he literally picked up the overhead projector and threw it on the ground, and it like exploded. He's like, "It's not the kicker, it's every missed tackle." And he left. We didn't have a teacher for like the rest of the 45 minutes. Poor Mr. Poor Mr. Dillinger.
Jesus.
Yeah, he was. God, Mr. Dillinger. He was my mom's math teacher in high school.
Any relation to John? I only have one question.
Well, that was a good joke. Wow, that was a good reference.
Yep.
Is he? We want to keep reliving this loss. Why?
It's all we got. I mean, I'm listening to you guys talk about, well, do we want to go to the Super Bowl and have the most losses? Or, it's like we don't have anywhere to go. It's like, well, it's
when
probably
was the
better
last time
we did lose.
the Vikings
we
had
lost.
were on the good side of playoff history? Like, think about like these memorable playoff games, and the last time the Vikings were like the winner of one of them.
Yeah, in my lifetime, there isn't one really.
Is it upsetting the Niners in '87? Maybe.
Yep.
Yes.
Like, how pathetic is that? That was 20.
Right.
That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That was so great. Oh my goodness.
Anthony
In 5 years,
Carter.
that game could run for president.
What year were you born, Luke?
I was born in '92.
92.
Thought
Christ.
today that I obviously come from a different era than you guys, and I think growing up in the 70s with the Vikings really kind of screwed me up because we took for granted that they were going to win their playoff games and be in it forever, and it's not quite formulated, but I'm sitting there thinking, my goodness, nowadays, last year we were just hoping and praying they could get by Seattle and think, okay, that'd be good enough, and it, you'd want to go further, but you wouldn't expect them to, and it's a whole different mindset. Whereas the Vikings, you just get in the playoffs and you are not that far from the frickin' Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You can win a couple games and you're there. I mean, look at the Packers. They were gangbusters, but boy, they were a doorstep away. And the Falcons, back then, you took it for granted that they were going to win their games and be in the hunt every flipping year. And it
does really it shapes how you view the game. I mean, I always find it amazing, even watching the Packers-Falcons game. Like, that's the NFC Championship when you're not in it. That's how it feels. It was just like a regular game, And then I look back at, like, 2009 with such, like there was so much riding on it for me. And it's like you said, it's just weird to see teams win 2 games and be in the Super Bowl. And it seems so hard in my lifetime for us to be able to do that just because we haven't.
Exactly. It's something along those lines, and I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say is. But I looked at the game last year as, if they won, I thought that would have been, that's it. I didn't expect them to go that much further because they came on at the end of the season, and anything else would have been gravy to me back then.
They had to go into Arizona.
Yeah, taken for granted. But if they had won that game, then they're going to Arizona, and they have every chance they could have beat him, and they're a step away. It all they have to do, is get to the damn playoffs, which they should have been in this year. They're really not far away. There's that whole story out there. We were as soon kind of going to talk about it, but then not, is that the Vikings can be the Falcons of last year where they're, blah, blah, blah. The only thing that story says to me is that the Vikings are not that far away. We're not the same team as the Falcons. They have, a better offense than the Vikings. The Vikings have to rebuild their offensive line, blah. So I don't think you can it's an apples to apples comparison that just because they did it, the Vikings will. But the point is, they are so dang close. If they make a few of the right moves, they get a number of the right breaks and stay healthy next year, they should be in this goddamn conversation, and there's no reason why they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I think it's important,
It's
too.
a really interesting way of looking at – oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that when things do go bad, like the Seattle game last year, and some people don't get – I think it depends on when you came up, like you said, Joe, because I was apoplectic when it came to the Blair Walsh situation, and everyone's like, there's always next year, and it's like, no, not really. For the Vikings, there's like every maybe 10 years, and we have one good shot at it, and then we need at some point we have to capitalize on these shots. Not to say that last year was a huge opportunity, but how many times have the Giants gone 9-7 but won their last 4 games and then won the Super Bowl twice? That happens. Maybe we need to go in as the underdog because every time we're favored, we get destroyed.
My point of view is skewed. It is.
I had a really interesting thought just now about this. So if you kind of look at our team and we were 8-8, and that's kind of like it just screams mediocrity. But you can just look at a team with such a bright future, like you were saying, and it's just like it just feels like the kind of thing where, man, you really think we should be able to get there. And we're just a piece or two away, and we just kind of have to have a couple breaks go our way and not have a bajillion injuries. Here are the other 8-8 teams in the league: Baltimore and Indianapolis, and then within a tie of that were the Redskins at 8-7-1 and the Cardinals at 7-8-1. Doesn't it feel like those teams are like these stagnant, dying teams, and we're just in a totally different league?
Yeah.
Like the Colts aren't going to be good for a long. I mean, they'll maybe have a year or two like the Packers this year, where Andrew Luck just wills them to a deep run. But like they're forever away from having a competent roster. And the Ravens have had this weird thing. I mean, Flacco is like dying. The Redskins are about to lose Kirk Cousins and then just like fall apart. The Cardinals are old and aging, and Larry Fitzgerald's on his last leg, and Carson Palmer's washed. And then you look at the Vikings, and they've got this like young core, and it just doesn't feel like those other teams have that.
You have the Falcons and the Cowboys, but during this, I really thought that this year, if we were going to make a run, would be a good year, just because I didn't think the competition wasn't as strong. The Patriots are always there. Granted, the Falcons are very balanced on offense, but I don't know. Dallas didn't scare me that much. They will in 2 or 3 years, but I felt like we should have beat them. at home this season, so there wasn't a ton of competition. There wasn't, even with Atlanta playing the way they are, it's not like they were the playing or had the expectations that the Panthers did last year. Let's see how that kind of panned out. But the key is that we got to take advantage of it when we have the opportunity, and I think we talked about this on a different podcast, but this offseason especially is going to be one where we look back and say, did they make the right moves? If not, that's kind of why the window closed. And I think the comparison to Atlanta isn't a terrible one, just because they have a 1-2 or two-headed rushing attack or whatever, and both their running backs are second round or later picks. So
they got a better offensive line though.
Yeah. They're actually a good example to look to because they show the blueprint for all the things that the Vikings need to do to become successful, because they fixed the offensive line and got better. They got immediate production from their draft picks with Keanu Neal, and they had their other draft picks developed. They had a great development out of Vic Beasley. They needed to a whole bunch of things to improve, and they all did, and it really allowed Matt Ryan to shine, and they needed to get a guy like Taylor Gabriel to kind of take some of the pressure off Julio Jones, and all of these things kind of all culminated together, and it all went right for them. And I think a similar thing needs to happen for the Vikings. You need to have the offensive line improve. You need to have a guy like Anthony Barr bounce back. You need to have these kind of young players like Trey Waynes needs to really develop. And then you're going to need to get a draft pick, probably on the offensive side, just because that's really where the problems are. You're going to need to have draft picks start contributing early. You can't have this red shirting, Trey Waynes, Laquan Treadwell thing. That's great when you're a team with a young core that can afford to be patient, but now our window is open, and it's now.
Yeah.
It's not in a couple years when everybody develops more. It is now the present moment. And I think the draft strategy needs to change, and looking to the Falcons is a really useful little example that we can maybe hope is in our future.
Is Julio Jones the main driver of that offense? I mean, do you think the Vikings
sometimes
I know he's injured a lot, but
so balanced, Joe. Those running backs are so good out of the backfield. I mean, they can run the ball, they can pound you a little bit if they want to, but they both catch the ball so well. He can fade back and throw to anybody. He's gets enough protection, from his line and he's a good enough quarterback I'd say Julio Jones really attracts a lot of attention, but you can't just guard him. There's too much there.
There have been games where Julio Jones gets shut down. I mean, one catch for 3 yards, and the offense still puts up 40. And then you can say, oh, okay, well, maybe they don't need him and we'll cover all the other guys. And then Julio Jones will get 3 touchdowns and 330 yards. And you're like, holy crap, how do you stop these guys?
I was thinking that he might be the only example I can think of a team going all in on a draft pick trade that actually worked. Ricky Williams.
It's because the Browns were on the other side of it. Yeah. That's really how you guarantee that to work.
I really think they're balanced, though. They have so many good, skill players because of their offensive line. I think you give the Vikings a solid, healthy offensive line, and Peterson in the backfield, and the receiving core, the receiving set that they have now, and they're almost as good. I really believe that.
It's really true that if you can get protection, suddenly a whole bunch of players start to look better. Suddenly Bradford looks better, and suddenly Adam Thielen looks like a world beater, and suddenly Stephon Diggs is having a better year, and Kyle Rudolph can. If you can get a little protection, all of a sudden all your skill players start to have suddenly they're so improved, and then you get puff pieces about how much they worked in the offseason.
Yeah, we're close. It's all going to come down to the line. Joe, you wrote a piece about Khalil back in 2016, but
yeah, it's unfortunate that I think he's going to be one of the main cogs for the Vikings going forward. You want him to fix the if you want him to fix it in one season, you're talking about the window. I think Khalil is the first part of it, and then they got to fix. They have to go draft and free agents elsewhere. I think you got to get a right tackle. So I think you end up have to keep Khalil, but who knows what.
You can't. It's when you draft somebody that high, especially, and you're paying him that much money. It's just not something that's easy to fix. And I think when he's healthy, he's not as bad as people say he is, and I noticed that AJ Mansour, who writes for purplePTSD.com, also did a piece for Vikings Territory, like a 3 questions thing, and was pretty bullish on Khalil too. And I think that it's not necessarily, we talked about this off the air, and I kind of I'd said that AJ was a pro Khalil guy, and I noticed, Joe, that you didn't really. It almost seemed like more of a necessary evil sort of thing. Like, well, it's the reality.
Correct. I think he can be good. I still harken back to his rookie year and figure he was the healthiest he's been since he's been on the team. And there's a big if coming back from a hip surgery. I mean, for an offensive lineman, that's got to be a difficult thing to do. So, there's no guarantees with him. I just think they don't have any other options. And if you want to get somebody top door talent on your left tackle, which you do in order to keep your immobile quarterback healthy, you got to have him, or unless you make a run at somebody who's better, and there's just not that much out there. So I think kind of by default they're going to end up with him if they, and I'm hoping they at least do that. If they don't, they could be in trouble. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I think that kind of bleeds over to the Peterson thing too. I think that you can look at like Tevin Coleman, especially in Atlanta, and say there's all these great running backs that are available in the second round, but I don't think they're in the position to. I don't know if they can use their second round pick this season on a running back and then try to have a rookie back there with a beat up line that you didn't replace with your highest pick. It seems like Peterson's gonna come back, all of his grandstanding on ESPN notwithstanding. But
I kind of agree with you. He's got to come back at a much reduced price, though.
Yeah,
it's got to be reduced to a big time. I think the difference between running back and left tackle is the draft class this year. Every draft person that is on Twitter that I follow, and everything I've heard is that this is like this insanely deep running back class, and not top heavy, deep. There's a lot of them, and that's just not true for the tackle market. So you kind of have to go be aggressive to go get an offensive lineman. But if you don't get a running back, you can get one you can get a second round guy in the 4th round because it's so deep. That's what deep drafts allow you to do, is make later picks that are like better value guys. Because, if there's 10 second round running backs, some of them are just gonna fall, but still be that good. So I think that you can, if you do lose Peterson, if you can get him back for $4 million a year, like that would be amazing. But if you can't and you have to draft a guy, I would much rather be in that position than being in the we have to draft a left tackle position.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the dream's not over, I guess. That's all I'm taking.
It's always over.
I know.
And the dream's been over since 2000.
It's never over, and it's always over.
Do you think if I offered Jimmy Hitchcock some like canteen money, he'd come on the podcast?
We'd have to have on the podcast like you are receiving a call from Hennepin County.
Collect call from Stillwater Prison.
Yeah.
Jimmy Hitchcock, number 34.
There's another one who is in prison.
That doesn't surprise me, man. I think we talked about this when Cluey was on the podcast, but those guys, a lot of them get really bad advice, and then they get desperate. No,
it was Orlando Thomas who was in trouble his whole career, but he passed away with ALS. He went to prison.
I didn't know Orlando Thomas went to prison. I just thought he was sick.
Yeah, he had a domestic abuse thing.
Oh. Wow. Well, that's a real bright way to end the show.
Wait, I have an optimistic note to end this show on. Perhaps the Packers just had their 41 donut game, and if the Vikings haven't recovered from that game as a franchise, we had one outlier year in 2009, and other than that, we've been in the throes of mediocrity and futility for like a decade and a half. Perhaps the Packers just started their go in that.
They're due, man. This whole my entire.
Not all they have Rodgers.
I know. It's just all I can. My dad always says that before the early '90s, the Packers had the worst quarterbacks, and since then, and since I've become cognizant of football, it's been nothing but Hall of Fame play out of Green Bay, and it just drives me nuts.
There's only one difference between the Packers, potentially calling that a 41 donut game for them, and the Vikings is the Vikings don't have anything in their trophy closet.
That's because the Packers stole it.
Well, it's true, Lou.
They stole
Lou.
the Jim Thorpe trophy.
They may be. What my point is, I don't think from a fan standpoint, it's easier for the Packers to look past and move on from that game. A, because they got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but B, they have.
Mean as much
every one of them will tell you what they got for. They still got those things in their back pocket. We have nothing in our back pocket.
That's the whole thing. That's why I don't understand this happy-go-lucky. Oh, better luck next year. No, man.
I agree with you, Joe. You got to capitalize. I totally agree with you.
It's once a decade for me at this point, and it's.
I want once in a lifetime. One.
Okay.
I'm a little bit closer to the other end than you are, Luke.
You want to hear something real depressing? Brett Favre was traded to the Packers the same year I was born.
Wow.
I have never been alive in a world where there wasn't a Hall of Famer at quarterback for the Packers.
Okay, that means you're younger than I have less life to live, so I got to go live some of it now, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Go to Miami.
Go sit Mai Tais on the beach. It's the off
There we
season.
go. Oh, final point. Never been to Miami.
I've never been to Florida. I heard the Epcot Center is nice.